Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. It has been a long time since we had our last show, but we're back with you as always. It's me, John Keir, one of your co-hosts, and my other co-host. Joining me as always is Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is season 3, episode 20, and as I just said, a long layoff. It's been over 2 weeks since our last show. We talked about the NFL draft. Just a full recap of how we thought it went. And now that some time has passed, Austin, have your opinions changed at all on the rookies and the draft class for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
No, not really. I'm still very upset about them. I still think this was a bad draft. The worst we've covered so far. I mean, we only covered 2, but still, did your opinions change?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I'm not in love with the draft class like I kind of was last year, but at the same time, I think I've convinced myself a little bit that it's not awful, but at the same time, I'm still pretty disappointed the Steelers didn't get any inside linebacker. I mean, they got some undrafted free agents, but I was really hoping they'd pick one, at least in the first 4 selections, and that didn't happen. It's starting to make a little more sense what we've seen with some of the picks, or at least it seems as though the decisions the Steelers made with some of their picks have indications that they don't believe some players will be playing for much longer, at least in Pittsburgh, and we'll get to some of that later. But it's been obviously quite a busy time around the NFL, even though not a lot's been going on as far as actual team activities. There's still a lot of news when you haven't been podcasting for 2.5 weeks. So you want to cover some of the highlights, Austin?
Yeah, sure. The first thing we got is that the sports betting has become legalized in the United States. So Congress ruled that it was unconstitutional to ban places from allowing you to bet on sports. So I don't know when it's actually going to become officially legalized. Obviously, it takes some time to be put into effect, but you'll be able to bet anywhere on your sports team if they win or not, and so on and so forth. Really, it was only legal to do like boxes, like Super Bowl boxes, and then that was really it. That was really all you were allowed to do because it wasn't technically betting on a team. It was just getting random boxes. But now you could just straight up say, okay, I think that the Browns are going to get crushed by this team every week and win. Moving on from that, rookie wide receiver Christian Kirk was arrested a few months prior to the draft for property damage and disorderly conduct. Teams said they were aware of this, so it probably is why he fell back into the first round. I had him in the first round in my mock draft. I thought he was going to go to the Jaguars. And honestly, he might have if he didn't get arrested like 3 months prior to the draft. I'm surprised he went as high as the second round because I didn't think that many wide receivers in this draft were that good. And for those arrests, it's pretty bad. I'm surprised even the Cardinals took a chance on him in the second. But that's that. And then more rookies. Rookies Rashawn Evans and Leighton Vander Esch have signed their rookie deals. Evans is a 4 years, $11.6 million, and Vander Esch is 4 years, $11.847 million. And they signed their deals with the Titans and Cowboys, respectively. And I just wanted to share that because I'm still salty because they were the top inside linebackers that could have been available for the Steelers. But that's really it. Then do you have something to say about the new kickoff?
I do, but before we get to that, there was also some news on Reuben Foster, the linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. We last heard he had been accused of domestic violence, and it seemed as though it was pretty... the evidence against him was pretty bad, but as of a few days ago, the defendant recanted her claims that Reuben Foster hit her. A tweet by Cam Inman, at Cam Inman on Twitter, did Reuben Foster's attorney to Ennis, did Mr. Foster ever hit you? No, sir. You lied because, in your words, you wanted to take him down. Yes, sir. To ruin his career. Yes, sir. Because the breakup was final. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody. So, it sounds as though, at least from what this is on NFL.com, by the way, that Alyssa Ennis testified that Foster never hit her and she made false accusations in order to extort money from him and to ruin his career because she was upset about the breakup. So, I mean, I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, but it looks as though Foster is in the clear, at least from this, but at the same time, it's also a reminder that, you can never be too careful, but at the same time, that it's unfortunate that this stuff happens because you want to be able to say, like, you want to be able to side with the victim because obviously in most of these cases, the victim is actually the victim, but it really makes it a lot more difficult and cloudy when you have someone doing something like this and trying to actively lying to a court of law to try to make sure that someone else's life is ruined, and that's just despicable in my opinion.
Yep, and it ruins it for everyone else. That's why there's doubt about these kind of cases. Like you said, you should be always on the victim's side, but it's because of cases like this that people are like, well, I don't really believe that. Like, I don't really believe her. So, just making it worse for everyone else because she's a bad person.
And it's like it shouldn't have to be that way, but when people are doing stuff like that, people are going to doubt you, and, some people doubt anything, which they probably shouldn't, but at the same time, some people have been given the credence to do that because of actions like this woman have taken. But unfortunate anyways, I guess fortunate at least for Foster's career, but he's not completely out of the woods yet, though. The judge overseeing his criminal case is going to decide next week. I closed the wrong tab. I believe he has a hearing for something regarding marijuana. I'm going to try to reopen that up. Did you see anything about that?
No, but he also might not be out of the water for the with his ex-girlfriend, because you got to remember Ezekiel got suspended last year when he didn't do anything, and they literally said, "Yeah, you're clear." And just because of the association that the NFL looked bad for whatever months that he was being charged, they gave him a 6-week suspension. So I wouldn't say Reuben Foster's out of the clear even for this, even though the girl admitted that she was doing nothing but trying to ruin his career. The NFL just punishes you by associating with these people that make them look bad. So I won't be surprised if he gets something for this, maybe even just 2 games.
Well, you are correct, and I'll rephrase. He is in the clear as far as the legality of this particular issue. What I was trying to say before is that he's due in court on June 20th for a pot charge. So you factor that in, and to be honest with you, I don't see how he doesn't get suspended now when you have the questionable association suspension with Elliott last year, the potential that could happen this year, and then you have the pot on top of that. He's definitely getting suspended.
Yep, I agree. There's no way he avoids it.
Alrighty. So we covered that, and then Austin was referring to before we talked about Foster there for a minute. The NFL is having their spring meeting in Atlanta next week. It's going to be May 22nd and 23rd, which is next Tuesday and Wednesday. They're going to be talking about a bunch of different things, mostly playing rules proposals, but the biggest one that they're going to be looking at is changes to the kickoff rule. So essentially, to sum it up, the NFL whoever's proposing this wants all the players on the kickoff team to be closer together to minimize high-speed collisions. So I believe, you know how it is, Austin, where the players on the kickoff team can be 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage where the ball is so they can get a running start? That would be eliminated. That would be eliminated. They would be sitting on the line, so as soon as the kicker kicked it, they could start running. The return team could sit anywhere from 10 to 15 yards, I believe, behind or beyond that. So that gives, I think it's, what is it? I'm counting here. 8 players. So you have to have 8 players within 15 yards of the kickoff point. So that's getting most of your players right in there. That leaves 3 people back, one returner, 2 upbacks, or 2 upbacks, 1 returner. And the proposal would completely eliminate the wedge. So in the past we've seen, when we were growing up watching football, we saw, four-man wedges, this wall of offensive, special teams players trying to block. That got eliminated, so it's only a two-man wedge right now. And this rule proposal, would completely eliminate the wedge. So I guess, what do you think about all that? Have you opened the link that I have pasted there? It has a tweet with all the proposed changes and intended effects. So I guess, what do you think about that? And I guess, what do you think this means for the direction of kickoffs in general?
They're also requiring for the kickoff team that at least two players are outside the numbers, at least two players are between the numbers and the hash, so that you only have two players that are right next to the ball, and so on and so forth. So, and five players have to be on each side of the ball. But so far, I don't really know. I don't really know what I think of it. I think that it's not going to change much. I don't think that unless you get rid of special teams, the injuries aren't going to stop. I mean, the running start is probably the biggest because you're not going to have all that momentum when the other team is coming, is when you're closer and you don't have that running start. So I guess it might help a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't really think it's going to help that much. What do you think?
It'll make a minor change, I believe. I also forgot to mention, now the kickoff will be just like it is in high school, where if the ball hits in the end zone, or just like how it is on a punt, if the ball touches the end zone, like somewhere in the end zone, it's dead. It's an automatic touchback now. So that's another thing that's got to be considered. What else? I'm trying to read here. I think I think we covered everything there. So probably not too much of a change, but I do believe some of the impact, because I can tell you, playing on the kickoff team or kickoff return team especially growing up was probably the scariest part of football growing up, for sure, because that's literally the definition of a high-speed collision. When you're compacting it to a 15-yard kind of zone, there's still going to be high-impact collisions here, but they're going to be more reduced. But I guess the real question is, if the return team has three guys back there, they're still going to pick up speed, so it's not like you're eliminating it completely. And I'm curious to see what this means for the actual return game. Is this going to make it easier or harder for teams to try to return kickoffs for touchdowns? I would think it would be harder, just because you're asking guys to hold on to blocks at that location for longer. But at the same time, if they do that, maybe returning it to the 30-yard line is a lot easier. I don't know. But regardless, I think this means that we're getting closer and closer to kickoffs being completely eliminated from the NFL. I think we're only a few years away from that, if I were to be honest with you. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to solve enough, so that I think it's just we're going to get closer to just eliminating the kickoff in total. So, yep.
I wouldn't be completely unopposed to that, but my question would be, how would you handle onside kicks? I think it was something either the new XFL or the other football league that involves Hines Ward and Troy Polamalu were going to do. It's something like, you can, instead of the onside kick, you get the ball at your own 10 or 15-yard line, but it's 4th and 10. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that sounds kind of interesting. I think I'd almost like that, but I don't know. At the same time, what do you think about that? And just hearing that for the first time, if you haven't read it yet.
That is interesting. I think I would like to see that too, because kickoffs, I've never really been a fan. I always just kind of kickoffs is the part of the football game where I'll turn and do something else for a little bit because I don't really care. Nothing really happens. You don't really often have much happening. So changing it to a 4th and 10 kind of situation would be sort of interesting. I like it.
Ever since the NFL moved the kickoff up 5 yards, it's been touchback city. That's all we've seen. Kickoffs used to be a lot more exciting, but then again, they were also a lot more dangerous. So I don't think I'd be that opposed to it, because you think about it, I think I saw 2 onside kicks that were successful last year. It doesn't work. And you can practice it all you want, and then you'll still get Chris Boswell doing the Rabona kick that goes a yard in front of him. So, it doesn't really. It just seems kind of pointless to me. But if you have a team take the ball, it's a 4th and 10. That's still not likely to. They're still not likely to get a first down. But you think about it, what if your team, they just came off a really good drive, say they were feeling it, a 6-7 play drive, they were just darting the ball all over the field. All of a sudden you've got a chance, and I think that would be pretty interesting, but obviously we're still quite some time away from that. But it's something to consider because that's what I've heard could be kind of the replacement for the onside kick in the event the NFL go to the automatic, the other team takes over at the 20-yard line kind of thing. So that'll be interesting. All right, so moving on to some Steelers news now. Steelers minority owner Dave Tepper is set to purchase the Carolina Panthers for a value amount between 2.2 and 2.3 billion. That's that's a lot of money, Austin, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess that's what it takes to get a football team. But now the ties to Carolina are going to be even stronger. I know we talked about this when we were talking about why our preseason games are the way they are. Because, I mean, now a former owner of the Steelers is going to the Panthers, and he said that he's going to run it just like the Steelers. So there's going to be literally like Pittsburgh Volume 2 over in Carolina, because he said he wants to run it the same exact way that the Steelers are run.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add on that?
I was going to say I'm pretty sure some of Steelers minority owner bought the Browns somewhat recently too. What was his name? David Haslam.
See, I didn't know he had a stake in the Steelers. I know it is Haslam is the owner, but I didn't know he had a stake in the Steelers.
I need to find that out because that's going to bother me. You want to jump to the next news point?
Yeah, sure. The Steelers have signed 4 of their 7 draft picks so far. Those 4 being James Washington, Marcus Allen, Jalen Samuels, and Joshua Frazier. That leaves first-round pick Terrell Edmonds, third-round pick Mason Rudolph, and third-round pick Chukwuma Okorafor to be signed yet. But they should be signed soon. Do you have anything to say about our rookies that have left to be unsigned?
No, just don't be surprised if it takes a while because I remember a few years ago Artie Burns didn't get signed until pretty late. So just don't panic. We'll probably see a lot of them happening next month, or the remaining ones happen next month. So, all right, Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, he bought a minority interest in the Steelers in 2008, and in 2012 he bought the Browns for $1 billion.
Okay.
The NFL rules prohibit ownership in multiple teams, so just like Teppert for the wait, did I say that name right? Tepper, sorry. He's going to have to sell his ownership of the Steelers. So since taking over the Browns, Haslam has a record of 20-76, so they're doing pretty well over there. That was that. So several Steelers minority owners now own teams. So the Steelers now have not ownership, but former minority owners now own 2 other teams in the NFL. So that's kind of interesting. Rookie minicamp concluded, and it ended well for wide receiver Damone Patterson out of Youngstown State and offensive lineman R.J. Prince out of North Carolina that I looked at pre-draft. They both signed with the Steelers from their pro tryouts, so they will be coming to OTAs and possibly training camp if they last that long, so it'll be interesting. Congratulations to both of them. Austin, you had an interesting question that you brought up to me the other day. Let's discuss it on here, shall we?
Yep. So there's no scheduled media or anything, but if Brandon Marshall would take a veteran minimum deal, would you want him on the Steelers? How about Dez? I was looking at the wide receivers that were left on the market because I thought that the Steelers should probably take a look at maybe some of the moving undrafted free agents that just got cut, or like maybe some of the free agents that were still there. And Brandon Marshall and Dez were like the 2 wide receivers that stuck out to me. So what do you think about signing one of them if they came for a veteran minimum deal?
If this had been a year or 2 ago, I would have said absolutely on Brandon Marshall. I thought he was a good receiver, probably a bit overrated for me, but I still didn't think he was someone you would look at and say, no, I don't want this guy. But he just struggled with injuries last year. I really think he's at the end of the road. This would probably be his last year. And I wouldn't want my number 4 receiver to be a guy that could be, you'd have to worry about him getting injured. So I would pass on him. And then Dez Bryant, I've already made my feelings on him known pretty well. I think he is a locker room cancer, and I've never thought he's been, outside of 1 year, I never thought he was that good. I've always thought he was overrated, and I think at best on a bad team he'd be a number 3 receiver. So I really don't think he's worth the headache at all. So I would absolutely stay away from both of them. But if you had to make me pick one, I'd pick Brandon Marshall, just because I don't think he's as much of a headache. But on the other end, I guess, what do you think about them? Would you give them a shot for a veteran minimum deal?
So I'm going to say no to Dez. I think he's a bad locker room habit in general, like you said, and wouldn't fit well as a backup. He already rejected a Ravens deal that wasn't that much, so I doubt he would anyway. As for Brandon Marshall, he isn't the best locker room person either. However, I think he is better than Dez in that regard. I think for depth purposes, I would want the Steelers to bring him in. He had a terrible year with the Giants, but hear me out. I think the Giants' offense as a whole flunked. Their offensive coaches were bad, and Eli Manning simply wasn't that good. Now, put him in an offense like the Steelers with better coaches and a better quarterback, I think Brandon Marshall could flourish as a wide receiver 4. And the Steelers need depth, so I'd be for it. I also think Marshall would be more likely to actually take a veteran minimum deal because of his market right now. He just recently visited with the Seahawks, but didn't leave with the deal. He's not getting much of a market at the moment, so I'd be a fan of Brandon Marshall's if he were to get a meeting with the Steelers.
Well, let's put it this way. I think we both can agree that we like him better than Justin Hunter.
Yes, I like him better than Justin Hunter.
All right. 2 other guys that, on the flip side, Austin brought up a couple free agents that were, out of house. I'm bringing up a couple of names that were in Pittsburgh last year. 2 guys that are free agents that have been discussed about returning but are still free agents as of right now. Let's start with the one that I think is more of a question mark, kind of an enigma at this point because of his injury last year in the playoff game. It's wide receiver Eli Rogers. We know about the status of the Steelers wide receiver group right now. We know it could stand to use an upgrade or two. We were talking about, obviously, just Brandon Marshall and Dez Bryant right there. What about Eli Rogers, though? Someone who obviously had a disappointing season, but, he also played his best game of the year in the playoffs, and then again, he also had an ACL injury. He apparently recovered in the first part of that very quickly because he was off crutches about 2 weeks sooner than he was expected to be. But since the draft, we haven't heard anything. It's just been, well, when's he going to sign? But we haven't heard him anything about him potentially signing yet. So I guess what do you think about Eli Rogers potentially coming back? And how telling is it that he hasn't signed yet?
I mean, I would consider bringing him in if I were the Steelers, but again, coming off a year where he had shockingly small numbers that we're expecting, and then throwing an ACL tear on top of it, I don't see the point. If he was coming off another solid year, I would think it would be worth it to kick the tires, but that's simply not the case. I think most teams are thinking that too, as he has seemingly gotten no interest on the market that I've heard of. I went to look it up to see if maybe he got a visit somewhere, maybe if he was in contact with someone or someone tried to contact him, but no, he's getting nothing. And I think that's telling enough. I think that teams are worried about his production because he absolutely went down. I think he had 17 receptions on the year, and that was really it. I think I would have to go get the numbers on that to make sure that's correct. But he took that ACL injury in the best game of the season. I think he had 40 yards. It's just I don't see the point. I really don't. The problem is there was no production to say, okay, he might be worth it after the injury. ACL injuries ruin careers. And he didn't show anything last year. Well, I don't see the point of taking the gamble. What do you think? Do you think the Steelers should consider bringing him in?
Okay, I have his stats in front of me. So here's the drop-off you were talking about, Austin. He did play in 14 games where he played in 13 2 years ago. He only started 4 games as opposed to 8 last year. His receptions went down from 48 to 18. His yards went down from 594 to 149. Yards per catch was 12.4 in 2016, 8.3 last year. 3 touchdowns last year, 1 this year. So, it's clear he had quite a big drop-off last year. He caught his 1 touchdown pass was against the New England Patriots, oddly enough, and that was his only catch of the game. I do have something from SteelersWireUSAtoday.com. According to them, as of 4 hours ago, Eli Rogers is running. He is now running, according to his Instagram account, a week ago he posted a video of him running. I'll send you the link, Austin, but it'll be interesting to see how much longer he goes now without being signed, because when I was thinking about this earlier, my stance was always go re-sign him, but like I said, unless he's re-signed within the next couple weeks, I think something was going to be wrong in his recovery process. We haven't heard anything since then, and I was really skeptical about it. But if he is running, that gives me a little hope to at least bring him back. I think it doesn't hurt to have him in training camp, and he knows the offense, and he wasn't great last year, but he knows the offense and he can play at least a little bit, and you're not counting on him to be an every down player like you were last year, at least in the beginning of the year and 2 years ago. So you can manage to kind of fly him under the radar maybe a little bit. But I sent you the link there. Let me know what you think about that. And then the other name we were talking about, which I think is much more likely to potentially come back given the state of this position, is Arthur Moats, the outside linebacker. What would you think about him coming back to Pittsburgh? Because right now, the outside linebacker group is Bud Dupree, T.J. Watt, Anthony Chickillo, and last year's 7th-round pick, Keon Adams, who spent the entire year on IR. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd definitely consider this one of the Steelers. This team had a terrible draft, regardless of how they plan to use Terrell Edmonds, Marcus Allen, and Morgan Burnett. There's no guarantee Allen could play a good linebacker. They tried it out for the first time at rookie minicamp, so I don't exactly feel good about that. So I want the Steelers to heavily consider bringing back Moats to challenge Adams, as there are only 3 outside linebackers that have played an NFL game on the roster currently. So that's something fun. What do you think about bringing Moats back in?
I think it makes the most sense just because, well, it'd be one thing if we knew what Keon Adams was, but he's really an unknown right now. And really, you have 3 NFL-ready guys. 2 of them are starters. One of them is a questionable starter right now in Bud Dupree. And Chickillo's a guy you want to be a backup, but, I mean, outside of that, you can't count on Keon Adams right now. I'm sure he'll show at least a little something, but you don't really know right now. So I'd feel a lot better if Moats was at least on the training camp roster. You know what he is, and he doesn't bring a lot to special teams or defense, but it doesn't hurt to bring him in because you can still cut him later. So I think that would be a pretty easy move to bring him back. All right, so obviously the big thing that happened this past week was rookie minicamp. So rookie minicamp involved about 55 to 60 players that included all the draft picks, all the undrafted free agents, a bunch of guys who were brought in for pro tryouts, and several guys who played last year but were not on the active roster. So I guess let's talk a little bit about it. There's not a whole lot to say, so I'll just kind of rattle things off, and if you have something you want to say, feel free to start talking, and I'll stop, just an opinion or something. So with that being said, let's begin. Already mentioned Damone Patterson and R.J. Prince turned their pro tryouts into contracts. They are still incredible long shots, but they've passed the first step. On the flip side, lineman Ikenna Nwokeji, I believe is how you say it. He was an offensive lineman that was signed as an undrafted free agent from Elon. He was waived after minicamp, so the Steelers are already saying goodbye to one of their undrafted free agents. Mike Tomlin reportedly had on-the-field praise from Marcus Allen and Terrell Edmonds, the rookie safeties, for their ability to communicate on both pre- and post-snap adjustments, and I think that's, it's not a huge deal, but it's something that's worth noting and looking for later on in the offseason because, as we know, for the past 3 years, the Steelers have been horrible at times when it comes to defensive breakdowns and miscommunications, and we saw it even in the Jacksonville Jaguars game, and that's just unacceptable on many levels. So if they're good at this, that could be helpful for the defense. But moving on, no surprise here, but James Washington and Mason Rudolph, college teammates, looked good when they were on the field together. I can't really say that that's really news, but it is something that we were noticing. A name that kept
Never would have guessed that.
Yeah,
Never would have guessed that James Washington and Mason Rudolph were hooking up very well with their throws and catches. Never would have guessed.
I mean, it would be bigger news if they weren't. That'd be really disappointing.
Yeah, it would. Jeez.
A name that's coming up a lot lately, at least on the defensive side, has been Matthew Thomas, the inside linebacker from Florida State. A guy that I looked at, he's a super athlete, but he didn't really have a lot of the other tangible stuff you want in an inside linebacker. But it looks like he's got the inside track to be at least the guy that could take LJ Fort's roster spot as a speedy special teams demon. So just keep your eye out for that. I'm not saying he's going to, but it looks like he's going to be the only person that can at least challenge for it. One that might interest you, Austin, is Quadri Henderson. It seems like he knows he's going to have to be ready to improve as a receiver. He apparently looked amazing in open space and is going to have opportunities as a returner, but he's going to need to be at least an option as a receiver to make this team in all likelihood. This and not his return ability is something you really want to pay attention to in regards to him making the team, because obviously we know he can return punts and he can return kickoffs. But if he can catch some passes in the preseason, I don't know if you want to talk about maybe like what kind of numbers he needs to put up in the preseason, but say he doesn't, like what he does in making the team will be more dependent on how he does as a receiver as far as being able to just catch passes as opposed to him returning touchdowns, I believe. And I'm not saying that his return ability wouldn't be as important as catching passes, because obviously he'd be returning punts instead of catching passes, but the Steelers want a guy that can do both. So if he can show that he can at the very minimum catch some passes, I think that's what's going to make the difference in him making the team or not. That is what I was trying to say. Did that make any sense?
No, yeah, I got you. He's got to show that he can be a receiver to make a crack at this roster. It's as simple as that, and I think he can do that. I think he can show that he can. If he can't show that he can catch as a receiver, I think he could show he could contribute on offense regardless. I think that might be enough to push him onto the roster.
Look, he's a natural athlete, and he can clearly run in space. He's got the best route runner in football in Antonio Brown. He's got good players around him. I'm sure he'll learn how to run routes a little better. And the catching part is something that, if you're a receiver, it's going to come natural to you or it's not. And he was a receiver in college for a reason. I know he didn't catch a lot of passes, but, at the same time, he wouldn't have been a receiver in college anyways. He was listed as a receiver. I'm sure he can catch passes. So it just depends on how well he'll be able to do it. All right, I don't know if you saw, but every NFL team has an extra player on their practice squad this season, courtesy of the NFL's brand new International Player Pathway program. The Steelers have tight end Christian Scotland Williamson from the United Kingdom. Like I said, he's listed as a tight end. The former rugby player, he stands at a measly 6'9" and weighs 275 pounds. He's a long shot to make the roster, obviously. But my goodness, I'm glad he's on our side, and I'm not sure why he's not a tackle, to be honest with you, but okay.
Yeah, that's a big dude. I think it's probably because he probably doesn't weigh enough to be a tackle. 275 for 6'9" actually doesn't seem like that much. I would have expected more for that tall, but still, I think he actually does have a pretty good shot at making the roster. I mean, Xavier Grimble made the roster last year and he didn't really do much. So not wide receiver. Tight end 3 is kind of up in the air for anyone to challenge. So he might make it. There's a chance.
I mean, worst case scenario, in a year or two, he becomes the next tackle on the outside of the line, the number 3 tackle or tight end, and he just mauls people. I mean, he is about maybe 50 pounds lighter than he should be. That'd be just a guess of mine, because obviously that's a lot of weight, 50 pounds for a lineman, and you would notice that on the NFL level pretty easily. So he's a project player, but at the very least he's clearly got good measurables. So that's something. Make sure you watch out for him too. It's a good story to have an international player getting a chance to practice with the Steelers. But all right, that covers pretty much all the news and notes from minicamp. So now that we've gotten to look at some things, what do you think about minicamp and going forward, just everything, really?
My biggest hope coming out of this is that Damone Patterson is a diamond in the rough and can make the team to provide the Steelers some depth, but that's a long shot. They practice without pads, so we'll see how it actually performs when OTA start. And then other than that, I was just I still find it funny that they had to make Mason Rudolph and James Washington connecting news. I think that everyone knew that was going to happen. So I didn't understand why news outlets are like, yeah, they did great. Like who would have thought? Like, but other than that, I don't really have much else to say. Do you have anything else to add about minicamp?
You hit it right on the head. Don't take what happened this past week as like this is how it's going to be. Like these guys are definitely making the roster. There's a reason that most of these guys don't make the roster. They aren't practicing with pads on, so don't take a ton of stock in it right now. We did get to see some things, though, about how the Steelers probably intend to try and use some of their rookies. Obviously, we know with Edmonds and Allen, they're going to be some sort of safety linebacker hybrids. And I already talked about the communication things. It's good to see that they're at least communicating well there. I don't know if it will continue to translate, but it's a good sign that they started well here. All right, so we're going to take one more look at the rookie draft class. So 7 picks plus 2 undrafted free agents, 1 for Austin, 1 for me. Then we're going to look at and we're just going to see, how are they going to figure into the team this year if they make the team this year? Are they going to be a player on offense or defense, or are they just going to be a special teams guy? Will they make the roster, blah, blah, blah. So, we'll cover it in depth. But let's start with, obviously, Terrell Edmonds. He's making the roster. So I guess how does he fit into the team this year? Is he going to be a primary special teams player? Is he going to play a lot of defense? Is he going to play some defense? What's he going to do?
I guess he's going to be playing a safety linebacker hybrid, assuming he showed he can handle playing linebacker in rookie minicamp. We'll see when he gets actual reps with the rest of the team in OTAs and training camp, but that's what I think the team wants to do. I think they want a guy that's going to be able to play close to the line of scrimmage as a linebacker, even though he's officially a safety. I don't really think he's going to play that many snaps, but I do think he will be a big special teams contributor. He's going to do both defense and special teams. What do you think Terrell Edmonds is going to contribute this season?
I'm in complete agreement. I think he plays a lot of special teams, and he'll play a little bit on defense. He'll be a role player. I don't think we'll see him in on a lot of early downs, but I think we'll see him on a lot of passing downs. It looks like the Steelers want him to be that guy in the middle of the field on third down, kind of replacing Ryan Shazier in the middle of the field. I can't say he'll be as good as Shazier for sure, but I think he'll play a lot on those downs, so he'll probably play about a third or a quarter, maybe a little bit more than that, than the starting safeties in Davis and Morgan Burnett, obviously depending on the game situation of the team. We'll see him more or less, but I think he'll be a situational defensive player. So let's go with some over-unders, and we'll do them for each of the players. Starting with starts, I put a number 3.5 starts. Do you think he goes over that number or under that number this year?
I think it's going to be under by technicalities. He's not going to be the starting safety unless Sean Davis is really bad. And since I imagine right now he's mostly going to be playing behind Burnett and coming in on special packages, I don't really see him getting many starts unless due to injury. It's hard for me to say he would even break even on that. He can't break even. Go over. What do you think?
I would agree with you, but the NFL is weird. They place their start statistic based on who's lining up on the first snap of the game. I think it's entirely possible some teams will line up in a formation that requires Terrell Edmonds to be on the field. So I think he'll get over this, over the 3.5 starts, but not because he's going to be, the guy. I think they'll just have him in on that first play, and because of that, the NFL will be like, all right, it's a start for Edmonds. So for that reason, I have him going over. As far as interceptions go, I put the number at 2. Where do you think he's going here?
I'm going to go with even. I think he's going to get exactly 2 interceptions. I'm not going to. I didn't want to say less because I think he's going to play enough defense or he gets enough, but I don't think he's going to get more. So, what do you think?
I'm going to go under. I think he's going to get 1, just because he's going to be playing near the line of scrimmage a lot, and I feel like he'll get picked on a little bit, but I still think he'll get 1. So I'll go under for this one. Tackles, I put at 45. I'll start it. I think he's going to go over, and like I said, he's going to get picked on a lot. and he'll be targeted a lot. So maybe he will end up with more interceptions than what I thought, but I just don't see that happening. But I do see him picking up a lot of tackles, so I have him going over 45. What about you?
I have under, but barely. It's really going to depend on the percent of snaps played, but I don't think he's going to get enough playing time to eclipse 45. I think he's going to probably finish with 40.
Pass breakups, I put it 4. What do you think about that?
Over. I wanted to go even because of his athletic ability. I believe he gets 5. I think that this is going to be the one improvement where he has. You could see that was over Mike Mitchell, where he actually is going to break up the ball. So I'm going to take over. What do you think?
I was originally thinking under, but I'm actually going to go even here because the backup safeties last year combined for 4, and I was originally thinking, okay, so maybe 2 or 3 makes sense, but I think Edmonds is going to play more than Golden or J.J. Wilcox did combined last year, so I think he'll be able to pick up at least 4. All right, second round pick, wide receiver James Washington. How is he going to figure into this team next year? Is he a special teamer? Is he, an offensive guy? What are we going to see from him?
James Washington should almost make an immediate impact and be a starting as the wide receiver 3 by the end of the year. It should come quickly, too, as the Steelers don't really have depth. I don't see him playing special teams at all, as he has no return experience, and he's not the gunner type, in my opinion. Actually has the speed for it, but I can't see him making a tackle. He's never played special teams really throughout his college career, so I don't think he does anything on special teams, only offense. What do you think?
I believe that he's going to slide in as the number 3 receiver right away, and he'll be a significant part of the offense, barring injury. I think he'll play special teams at least in the preseason. I didn't know he didn't have any experience in special teams before, but I do think the Steelers are going to just try it anyways because James Conner didn't have any special teams experience really coming out of college anyways, and he was a big special teamer last year. So at least look for him to at least try it, and you can bet the Steelers are going to want him to at least try it. So expect him to be a primary offensive player with potentially secondary special teams play. Over-under for James Washington, let's start with starts. I put the number at 7 starts this year.
Well, Juju Smith-Schuster managed to start 7 with Eli Rogers and Martavis Bryant. So with less competition, I say Washington goes over. What do you think? I'm in complete agreement. I think he's closer to 10 because of all the 3 receiver sets the Steelers will run. Receptions, I had 47, over or under. I'm going over. I think Washington is going to be great and really contribute. I think he may get around 60 catches, and that's a lot. That really is a pretty high number. But, Juju got 79, so I'm kind of hoping that the Steelers got another player like him. So I'm going over. What do you think? I'm actually going to go under just because there's a lot of places for the ball to go. Last year, Antonio Brown got his 100 catches. Lev Bell got 80-ish. The number you were thinking of, 79, Austin, that was targets for Juju Smith-Schuster. He finished with only 58 catches. So that number, that's fine. That number is probably going up too, I would think. So it's not that I don't think James Washington is good. I think he's definitely good enough to get 65, 70 catches this year. But I think the ball is just, there's only so many places or so many times you're going to get the ball when you have that many other playmakers on the team. So I'm going to go under just by a little bit. And the other thing to consider is what about Vance McDonald? What if he's healthy? Because he caught 10 passes in the Jaguars game. That was the best we saw him all year. What if he does manage to be healthy for most of the season and he is a weapon over the middle? So it's not that I don't think Washington will be bad. I just don't think he's going to get as many chances as you would want him to since there are so many other good players that are going to get the ball. Receiving yards, I put at 800 because with Washington being a deep threat, I've just paired 47 and 800. That's around 16, 17, 18 yards per catch. I figured that would be a pretty fair number. So that being the case, would you have him over or under this? Under. I know it probably conflicts with my last answer as Washington was a deep threat in college, but I think the Steelers rework him a bit to throw off teams and gets a few more catches close to the line of scrimmage as an NFL player. What are you going with? I'm going to go with the under, but it's going to be very close. Like I said, 17 yards per catch on 47 catches is around 800 yards, so it's not impossible, but I think he's going to be just under because I think he's going to get like 43 to 45 catches.
Receiving touchdowns, I put at 5.5. What do you think about that?
Under. I don't see him being super useful in the red zone like Juju was coming out, so I'm just going to say finishes with less. What do you think?
He's only 5'11", and he's mainly a deep threat. He'll definitely catch some, but I don't think he's going to be catching a ton. I think 3 or 4 is more likely this year. All right, next pick, Mason Rudolph, the quarterback. This will be an interesting one because he's not the starter, but how is he going to factor into the team too, I guess? Is he, or when is he going to be the number 2? Is it going to be this year?
I think he's going to be the quarterback by the end of the preseason, at least for God's sake, I hope, because he was drafted with a first round grade, so he should really already have some pretty solid ground on Dobbs and Jones. He already should be above Dobbs. That should already be covered, since if he had a first round grade, Dobbs did not. He's going to have to fight Jones for the number 2 spot, though, and I think he comes out victorious in the preseason. What do you think?
I don't know. See, I'm torn because I think a lot about when Ben Roethlisberger was a rookie, but I also have to remind myself that it's not 2004 anymore. When Ben Roethlisberger was drafted, he was the number 3 quarterback, actually, and he was a first-round quarter. He was the 11th pick in the draft. He was going to sit behind Tommy Maddox and Charlie Batch. The only reason he played was because obviously Tommy Maddox got hurt in week 2. But Charlie Batch broke something in the preseason. He missed the entire season. I'm not saying there isn't an accelerated learning curve for Rudolph now, but I just think if you need to win a game this year, I think in most scenarios I would want Landry Jones just because he knows the offense better than anyone besides the offensive coordinator. It's been pretty well documented that Jones knows the offense very well, and he's not super talented, but because he knows the offense so well, apparently he even knows it better than Ben Roethlisberger. That's what has been said around there before. And on top of that, Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State didn't take snaps under center. I mean, he struggled with that at minicamp. If you can't take snaps under center, I just think that plus the whole reading the defense thing, which he still needs to learn, I think that's a lot for a rookie at the beginning of the beginning of their career. Because the other thing you have to realize too is that number 3 quarterbacks got snaps in practice back in 2004. That doesn't really happen anymore. The scout team is run by the number 2 quarterback, and the starter will play or practice with the offense. Rudolph will get some practices though because Roethlisberger likes to take Wednesdays off now that he's getting older. But I don't see a point where you can go into just say like it's a game the Steelers need to win. It's against the Ravens. Maybe you do want to start Rudolph, but I'd personally rather go with the guy that's seen the Ravens defense a lot, not playing against it, but he's studied them for so much longer than Mason Rudolph. I'd rather have Landry Jones in a game where you need to beat the Ravens as opposed to Mason Rudolph. Again, just this year, I'm not saying that Rudolph isn't going to be a better quarterback than Landry Jones because I absolutely think he will be, but I think you are going to need to rely on Landry Jones in a game more than Mason Rudolph, at least in 2018. So I think Rudolph is the number 3 quarterback this year. As far as over-under for games active, I put it 6.5 in case he is the number 2 quarterback. I guess it's kind of what you think. So is this an over or under for you?
I think that it's going to go over with my thought process that I think he's going to be a quarterback 2 straight out of preseason. So he's going to be active all 16 games barring injury. What do you think?
I'm going under for what I just said. I think Landry Jones is going to be the backup this year, and Rudolph won't be active because of it. For starts, however, I had at 1.
I'm sorry. Even if the Steelers have another good year like they have the past 2 seasons, I think he starts the last game of the season, and I think he's going to get that 1 start. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement. I had originally said 0, but then when you brought that point up to me that the last 2 years the Steelers have played meaningless games, I think in that scenario you'd obviously want the rookie as opposed to Landry Jones. So I'll go even there as well. So since we're talking about 1 start, the touchdowns and interceptions we're going to put at 1.5 and 1 respectively. So you going over or under on either of these?
I'm going to put over on the touchdowns. I think it's going to be solid in this 1 start and get 2. And for the interceptions, I think I'm going to go over as well. It's going to be a rocky start at the first start, and I know it. It's just coming. It's here. What do you think?
I'm going over for touchdowns and even for interceptions. Passing yards at 230, I'm going over just because I feel like they're just going to let him throw it, let it rip.
Yeah, I agree with that. He excels at deep passing, so I believe he can easily head over this. And he's going to have James Washington, the receiver he already knows how to connect well with. So I'm going to say over easily.
All right. Second, third round pick, Chukwuma Okorafor. Is he figuring into this team at all this year?
I don't expect much at all. He may play a few snaps with some extra linemen, but even then, I don't think he's considered the first guy off the bench for that. He may be inactive for most of his games. What do you think?
He's going to be inactive for most, if not all of them. He might, at best, be the extra tight end guy at the end of the line, I think. And furthermore, let's talk about the tackle position. He was clearly drafted for the future, but who is he going to be replacing? They like Matt Filer. Gerald Hawkins was a fourth-round pick 2 years ago. Or could it be further down the line? Is he going to be replacing Marcus Gilbert or Alejandro Villanueva, do you think? What do you think about the tackle position?
Well, he's a developmental player with a lot of upside, and what that means to me is the Steelers must be looking to the future and getting ready to replace Gilbert, who came off a year with a lot of injuries. Okorafor is raw, but has the qualities that can be molded to become a starting tackle. So I think he's going to be developed to replace Gilbert. Personally, I think he's going to take some time to season on the bench and learn behind all the other Steelers linemen. But I think he's their future plan because they think he has flash first-round talent, but he's just not been playing football for that long, so he needs to learn the game even more, play it, and practice it more. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement with you. Marcus Gilbert had a down year on the field and off the field. He wasn't bad when he was on the field. He wasn't on the field that much. He had multiple injuries and a PED suspension, and he also wasn't as dominant when he was on the field last year. So I think it's possible the Steelers looked at that, and they knew they were losing Chris Hubbard, and they figured, you know what, we're not sure how much longer we're going to have this guy. So they got someone that they think could be his replacement. Over-under for starts this year, I put at 0.5 just because, let's be honest, if he's starting, something really bad happens, so I put under here.
Yeah, under, again, he may not even be the first guy off the bench after injury, so it would take like 2 injuries for him to get onto the field. So I'm going to say no and under.
Active participant in games, I put 6, and I went even just because I'm hoping Gerald Hawkins or Matt Filer can make the team ahead of him and will be active. The Steelers would keep 9 offensive linemen in this case, which is possible and has been done before. But injuries are common along the offensive line, and I think at some point Okorafor is going to be counted on to play some games this season, but obviously not too much. What about you, though? Do you agree with me?
No, I have under. I think Hawkins is going to be active as the extra tackle most of the time. And then, obviously, you said they liked Filer, so it's really hard for me to say that if when he makes the team that he's going to be active for at least 6 games. I think he's going to be inactive he's going to be one of the team's inactives for most game days. Yeah.
Safety Marcus Allen, the 5th-round pick. He's going to be mostly a special teams guy. Is he going to make the team, too?
He's going to make the team. He's going to be playing special teams to come into certain packages to help with the run. He's not very good in coverage, so he's probably not going to see much playing time, but when the team is going all out to stop the run on a play that they think the opposing team is going to be running, I wouldn't be surprised to see Marcus Allen on the field because that's where he does best, by the line of scrimmage. What do you think?
I think we'll see him on defense in specific packages on early downs when the team spread out the Steelers' defense. You'll want him in on those plays because the teams will like to run the ball there to get him out in space, and that's where Allen is at his best on defense. But otherwise, he's not going to play much, and he's expected to be a big special teams contributor. So that being the case, I also put his starts at 0.5, half a start. I'm going under just because I don't think he's a starting caliber player yet, or maybe never will be either.
I'm going under, too. Definitely not going to be coming in to start. Even if there's an injury, Terrell Edmonds is going to be the first safety in on an injury, or Nat Burr. So it would take like 3 injuries for him to be in the starting role. So he's not going to have a start.
Same thing for interceptions. Half an interception, over or under?
I went under. He's going to be playing against the run mostly when he does come out in defense. I mean, obviously, you can't predict when a team is going to throw or run. You can only try and guess it. But still, he's not going to be in there on many passing downs. I say under. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going under as well. We all know he's not a coverage guy, so we shouldn't expect much from the pass defense anyways. You complicate that with the fact he's not going to play defense much. I'd be shocked if he got one this year. Tackles I put at 15. What do you think about that?
I have under. I can't see him getting many snaps on defense with Terrell Edmonds and Matt Burr there. So and special teams, it's just hard. If you're a really good special teamers, I feel like you finish with like maybe 12 tackles, and that's rough. That's a lot of tackles to make. So I'm going to say under. What do you think?
Making 10 special teams tackles is quite an achievement. So they're hard to come by, but I think he will play a little on defense, and that'll be enough to surpass 15 tackles on the season, but I don't think he's going to have 20. 1.5 pass breakups. What do you have here?
I have under. Even if he happens to be on the field on a pass snap, I don't have faith in him to be that good to break it up. Out of college, all everyone talked about was his coverage. It wasn't that good. So I'm going to go under. What do you think?
I'm going to go with 2 here, so I'll go over, but not because he'll deflect passes. I think it's because he's a very physical player, and he'll jar a couple balls loose. So that's where he's going to get it from. Running back Jalen Samuels, does he make the team? Will he play defense or special teams? What do you think about this?
He's not making the team. There's just no way. He doesn't contribute anything that the Steelers need. Like, he had kickoff return experience, but he's not one to do that in the NFL. It's just by his size and his speed. It's just not a good combination to do returns at all. And he doesn't contribute anything. You could argue he might be a better blocker than James Conner, but that's really it. And I can't say that that's enough to put him over Fitzgerald Toussaint, who can go on return teams and return the ball. I just don't think Jalen Samuels adds a lot of anything for the Steelers at running back when they already have a pretty full room where Le'Veon Bell is going to be getting 90% of the snaps, if not like 98. What do you think?
If he does make the team, which I'm not sure that he's going to, I think he might be a practice squad guy this year. He'll be mostly a special teams guy, and he'll be used in gadget situations. That's about it. So for this exercise, assume he does make the team, Austin. Is he going to be active for 5 games?
Under. He doesn't, like I said, his special teams repertoire isn't that great. He's not going to be doing much. Fitzgerald Toussaint can. It's just there's no reason to have him active. He's going to be inactive because there's nothing that he can contribute that something else on the team can. He's not going to be playing many snaps as running back since Le'Veon Bell is going to have it all. And on those 2 plays that Le'Veon Bell isn't in, it's going to be James Conner. So I'm going under.
Does he play a single game this year if he makes the team?
No. He's not going to. Unless Le'Veon Bell gets hurt, which, I mean, it's a possibility. Anyone could get hurt, and he has already gotten a ACL injury, but he's not going to be – I don't think he's going to see – if he makes the team, I don't think he sees a single rush.
All right. That being the case, why don't we just move on then? Because, I mean, because the running back position is so they already have 4 players in front of him that could play, and – 3 players in front of him that could play. He's not big enough to be a tight end. They already have their fullback, so I just figured, you know what, let's just move on, eh?
Yep, I'm down for that.
All right. Joshua Frazier, the defensive tackle and final pick in the draft for the Steelers. Does he make this team? What's his upside? Where's he playing?
He may be the backup defensive tackle. That's what I'm really hoping for. The Steelers love McCullers, though, and he has an uphill battle to beat McCullers out for a spot on the roster, but I mean, it's a possibility. McCullers hasn't really shown anything. He's just been a big guy that people had hoped would turn into something, but he just never really got there. He never really got those got to where the Steelers wanted him to be with his size. But still, the Steelers love him because I thought he was going to not be re-signed for sure, but the Steelers brought him back. So Frazier has a uphill battle. What do you think?
He's a depth defensive lineman right now, and he's looking to replace Daniel McCullers. Worst case scenario, he's not as good as him and gets cut and maybe goes to the practice squad. Best case scenario, he boots McCullers off the roster and can play a little defense this year. Games active, let's go 5. What do you think about that? Over or under?
Under. I think that actually I'm going to go over. If he makes the team, he's going to be the backup defensive tackle. So I think he's going to go over. I changed my mind. I think that as a backup defensive tackle, he's going to be active for like at least 10 games. So I'll go over. What do you think?
I'm going to go even at 5 because he would be replacing McCullers, and McCullers was not active for many games last year. So I'll go even at 5. Tackles at 15. Over or under?
Just under. I think he gets 12 if he makes the roster, so barely under. What do you think?
I'll go under. I think it's going to be closer to 5 to 10, especially depending on how many games he plays. 15 is a lot for a backup nose tackle. Cam Hayward had around 30-ish last year, too, as a starting defensive end. So just keep that in mind. All right. Sacks, I had at half a sack. I'm going under here just because we already know he's not much of a pass rusher, and there's a reason nose tackles don't usually finish with 10 sacks.
I'm going to go under as well. If he gets even in on 1 sack, I would be beyond impressed. That would blow me away. So
that would be a cause for celebration. All right, on to our 2 undrafted free agents. We'll go with your favorite guy, Austin, Quadri Henderson. We already talked about him a little, but I guess how is he going to figure into this team if he makes it? How much can we expect from him on offense since we already know what he would be on special teams?
I don't expect much from him on offense. I think that he will be contributing a little bit by replacing Martavis Bryant on both jet sweeps and wide receiver screens because of his shiftiness, and that's what Martavis Bryant did, and we don't have that player anymore. But I think Quadri Henderson could do that because of his shiftiness in space. But other than that, he's really going to be like an Eric Weems or Devin Hester type where he doesn't really do much on offense, and he's going to be used mostly on special teams. What do you think?
You covered it perfectly. I actually don't have anything else to add to what you said. Over under for games active, 16. So is he going to be active for every game this year?
I'm going even. He's making the team, and only for his return abilities, he's going to be starting every game. Because obviously you need your returner. You're not going to make him inactive. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement. I think he does make the team, and in that scenario, he will be the returner, so he's going to play every game barring injury. Catches, 5. Does he have 5 or more catches, or does he have 5 or less?
I'm going over. I think he's going to get somewhere between 7 to 10 catches, and most of them are going to be on wide receiver screens. I can't really see him making more than that, though. What do you think?
I'm going over. I originally thought he wouldn't be throwing a pass this year, but we expect a lot of designed runs for him. But the other thing is I remember Eli Rogers caught a ball last year, which was basically a sweep, but Roethlisberger tossed it forward to him in the shotgun when he was running past. That's technically a pass and a catch. So I think that will contribute to that. That plus screens, I think, will get him somewhere around the 10 catch mark. Receiving yards, 125, over or under?
I'm going to go over. I think he breaks off a catch and run on a screen pass and gets like a 60-yard touchdown and gets nearly half those yards on one play. So I'm going to go over. Do you think he gets more than 125 yards or less?
I don't, just because the best I remember Quadri Henderson in college, as far as his offense, was when he was getting a running start. Screen passes, he's not going to be getting a running start, and so I don't think he'll be getting many big ones this year. It'll be close, though, but I'm going to go under. Rushing attempts at 12.5, over or under?
I think it's going to be under. Martavis Bryant only did jet sweeps like maybe 7 to 8 times a year. I can't really remember him doing more than that, so unless Henderson is really electric at it, I can't say he's going to reach 20 or past 12.5, really. So what do you think?
It's going to be close, but I think it's over. He should get more or almost all of the reverses and end-arounds this year. Last year, the Steelers had guys like Bryant, Rogers, Smith-Schuster, and Brown all doing it. I think Henderson takes almost all of their touches as far as that goes, so I think he'll get more. Rushing yards at 150, over or under?
Under, but I really wanted to go over for the same reason I went over for receiving, but I don't think he's going to be that great on offense where he gets over 125 yards receiving, 150 yards rushing, so I'm going to go under for this one. What do you think?
I'll go over because I think he breaks a few of those for huge gains, and by the end of the day, he'll surpass the number. Return touchdowns at 1.5, over or under?
I'm going to go under. I think he's going to get 1 if lucky. It's not really something easy to come by, so I'm going to go under. What do you have, Matt? I'll
also go under. 1 is ambitious but possible, but 2 is a lot. Speaking of total of two total touchdowns this year, over or under?
I'm going to pick even. I think he gets 2 touchdowns exactly. If my guess, I think both are going to be receiving touchdowns, which is surprising. I think he's going to take off on some screens or something. So I'm going to go even. What do you have, Matt?
I have over. I think he's going to get 3. I think he'll get 1 return touchdown and 2 rushing touchdowns on jet sweeps. So I think he's going to get just over. Last player we're looking at is inside linebacker Matthew Thomas, the undrafted free agent. Does he figure into this team at all? Does he make the team at all?
I don't see him playing defense if he makes the team. He's going to have to contribute on special teams to that. And honestly, I don't think he makes the team. It's sort of close because he could replace LJ Fort, but the team's view on inside linebackers really messes with me. I don't really understand their thought process. Their thought process bothers me. I forget what episode where I went on a whole rant about how LJ Fort shouldn't have been on the roster because of them starting Sean Spence over him. So I don't know. I think he doesn't make the roster, but this team with inside linebackers confuses me. What do you think?
Conventional thinking will tell you that you would take the younger guy that's got less mileage and will be cheaper, but LJ Ford isn't exactly old, slow, or expensive either. So I think what makes the most sense is stashing Thomas on the practice squad. But if he does make it, he's taking LJ Ford's spot. That's as simple as it is. Say he does. Over/under active for 5 games.
I'm going to say over. I think if he makes the team, he's going to stay active like LJ Fort was for the most part. I think 5 isn't too hard to achieve as a special teams player. What do you think?
I'm going under just because I think the Steelers have several inside linebackers already, and it's not the big difference is they're going to be using safeties more instead of linebackers, so he will be more dispensable. Tackles at 2, over or under?
I'm going to go over. I think if he plays special teams, he'll finish with 3 or 4. What do you think?
I'm going to go under. I think that's pretty hard. If he played special teams for 5 to 10 games, this would be doable, but because I don't think he's going to be playing for much, I don't think he'll finish with more than 1 tackle. Defensive snaps, 10. Over or under?
I'm going under. I really don't think he's going to be getting playing time at all with all these defensive rookies and all these guys that are already here. So I'm going under. What do you think?
Under. I absolutely do not want him playing defense at all. I'm actively thinking, would I rather have Sean Spence for 10 snaps or would I rather have Matthew Thomas in the middle of that defense in an NFL game? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'd almost rather have Spence because of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm going Matthew Thomas. I'd rather have the speed because Sean Spence is so slow.
All right, fair enough. All right, that should wrap it up for today unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, that should be it.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions about the show or you want to ask us questions about the Steelers, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. We post our episodes on SoundCloud and YouTube under our name. You can also find the links on our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Check us out for news on Twitter at Stronger_Steel. And check us out on Instagram. We now have a kind of a revamped approach to it. We're going through every game the Steelers played last year. I'm posting pictures of the good and bad moments from the season that was 2017. In the middle of week 2 right now. Should be wrapping that up today or tomorrow. We'll get into week 3 shortly after that. Check it out at Stronger_Steel_NFL. We appreciate all the support you could give us. So thank you so much. And Austin, thank you again for joining me today. It's been a long time, but it's been a good time off, and we're looking forward to OTAs getting started next week, right?
Yep, it's exciting. We're starting to see football stuff happening.
All right, can't wait. So thanks again for joining us, and as always, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Have a good day.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.